I wanted to talk about an issue with regards to dating amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. And just so that everyone knows, as a witness, you are only supposed to date people who are members of the congregation. And that's not really so much the problem as it's a little bit more detailed and complicated in that you are only really supposed to date people of a certain standing amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you see someone at your congregation and it's a sister or a brother and they're about your age and you are interested in them, just because they go to the Kingdom Hall, you still can't necessarily date that person. I have a situation that I'm aware of where there's a brother who had been disfellowshipped a few times and started going to meetings again, and he was looking for someone to date. And I'm assuming he probably finds himself in that situation where if you're not of a certain standing, you're viewed as being somewhat worldly or whatever the case may be, then you're stuck in a situation because you technically can't date anyone. If you can't date anyone in the world and no one in the hall will date you, then what are you supposed to do? So he begins to date someone who was raised in the truth. She could answer any question in the Watchtower or any of the publications. She was literally raised in the truth her whole life, but for whatever reason, she had never gotten baptized up to that point. Well, the two of them began to date. And from my understanding of what I saw, things were going well. They were having Watchtower studies together. And of course, this was done in a group. It wasn't just the two of them. And not only were they preparing for their meetings, but they were attending regularly. And she was studying to get baptized. So when I found out about that, I thought it was great. I'm thinking, good for them. That's a good situation that he found himself in. Well, come to find out later that the elders in his congregation pretty much told him that if he wanted to be used in the congregation or if he wanted to have any privileges, then he would have to stop dating that sister. Why? Because the elders questioned her heart motive as to why it was she was studying for baptism. And they felt like if he broke up with her and she still got baptized, well, that means her heart was in the right place. So they have this discussion with the brother, and the brother eventually talks to the sister and tells her that the two could no longer date. And keep in mind, they'd been dating prior. They didn't just start talking. They'd been dating prior to the brothers having this discussion with him, and she was upset. Thought her privacy had, that they had gotten to her private life and everything. And I don't think that, far from studying to get baptized, she was so upset, I don't think that she continued going to the Kingdom Hall. I could be wrong. Maybe she started going to another congregation because of the embarrassment. But the point is, if you are a Jehovah's Witness, you're not disfellowshipped, you're not reproved, but you're not necessarily auxiliary pioneer, regular pioneer, or you maybe don't make all your meetings because of your work schedule, and you are branded as not being fit to date, What exactly are you supposed to do? Just magically change your work schedule? You're just not supposed to date anyone until the new system? I spoke to a sister. I remember, of course, this is after Bethel, a sister that I knew was a nice sister prior to me going to Bethel. And I ended up calling her and trying to invite her to a gathering. And I remember her saying something to the effect of she wanted to stay focused and she didn't want to date anyone until the new system. Keep in mind, she's a young sister. So we're hoping the new system is coming really soon for her to have made that decision. And of course, I respect that decision. But again, these are things you run into when you're trying to date and you're trying to do things the right way. One issue is the elders discourage anyone from dating you if you're not, pretty much doing everything the way they feel it should be done. Of course, your work schedule, you can't always control that. But nonetheless, if you're not making all your meetings, regardless of whether it's your work schedule, they may not view you as someone that is dating material, and they may ask you not to date anyone. And then two, you have people who have decided that they don't want to date until the new system. And then three, you have people who have tried to get someone outside the congregation to date and then bring them with them back to the hall, I guess, in an attempt to avoid immorality. They've gone to that extent. And I know one brother in particular, a girl that he had been dating, and he'd been dating her for a while, and she didn't want anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. So now he's stuck in another way. He didn't want to marry her because she did not want anything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. And she made it clear that if the two of them had children, she didn't want them going to the Kingdom Hall. He was stuck because he didn't want to break up with her and end up without anyone and end up in immorality or whatever the case may be. And then he didn't want to marry her because of her stance against Jehovah's Witnesses. So I guess the question then is, if you can only date witnesses in a certain standing, not just any witness, but a witness in a certain standing, that leaves people out of the equation to date anyone. And what are they supposed to do? So you end up with people who, I guess what you say, get in trouble. I got back from Bethel, and a lot of the friends that I had, quote unquote, gotten in trouble. I think they just found themselves in one of those categories where it was just very difficult for them to date. And, they don't know what else to do. So it's a tough situation. And I feel for people that find themselves without anyone really to date. And then they're looked down upon because of not having extreme self-control to keep from dating anyone.